What time is it? It's the exact same time as when you asked earlier, and it'll be the exact same time when you ask later. There is no time here!
So boom, right? I've been getting real detrimentally nostalgic over Sonic Generations recently. I've got a lot of love for the game, and I had to play it a lot because my save kept getting deleted back in the day. So really, I just kind of feel like yapping about this shit. This game was the first time I ever really looked into a game's development pre-release. I didn't know everything, like Sega apparently fucking leaking the Sonic Anniversary name on accident, but it's nostalgic to look back on for me as it really helped foster that deeper love for game development I have now. Development surprisingly started way before the game's initial release in 2011. Its earliest stages beginning in 2009, not actually too long after Unleashed's release. In a bid to satisfy both sides of the fanbase, they chose to implement both the modern boost formula and the classic formula, but they ran into a small dilemma. They wanted to use the current console generation to recreate older stages in the highest quality possible, but the Wii kinda can't do shit like that, so instead they sliced the team in two, and then one of them would go on to develop Sonic Colors, while the other continued working on what was still called Sonic Anniversary. It's almost impressive that this game ended up as good as it did. Even though development took 4 years, it seems like Sega was distracted for most of it. The PSP version may be the only one with documentation, but there was an attempt at both a DS and a Wii version, all intended to come out at around the same time. The team was even split in half to go work on the Wii version, just for that to become a completely different game that ended up coming out the year before this one. The story is probably the thing most hit by this. It seems earlier ideas were more ambitious than what we got. Not only was classic Sonic supposed to talk, but Dreamcast Sonic was initially planned to appear as his own character, and be a third gameplay style. It seemed like the focus was definitely more on refining the level design, remaking the classic control style in the engine that wasn't really built for it, and making the presentation as high quality as possible. Even though the number of levels are a bit small, they weren't hit by the effects of the development time as hard, and are the best parts of the game. Because of that though, the story has a lot of missed potential that I want to get into. Also, this is the order I normally do anyway, so... Now the story begins in a really cool way actually. It had become common at this point for every Sonic game to start with a cutscene setting things up in some sort of way. But instead, it just immediately brings you to classic Green Hill like it's Sonic 1. Afterwards, the story actually begins as classic Sonic gets caught lacking by one of the coolest, but also random ass villains in the series. It goes on to crash modern Sonic's birthday party, stealing all his friends and transporting him into this white void with nothing but Green Hill. After playing Act 2, Tails is saved, and you get an idea of what most cutscenes in this game are gonna be like. Throughout, you save one friend per level, and each will have a cutscene that changes depending on which act you did second. Most of the game's story is just cool little interactions like this. They can run the gambit from stuff like cool references to past games to Tails knowing what death feels like just kinda being ignored.
Thanks, Sonic. I thought I was dead, floating without a body in a black limbo. I'm gonna have nightmares for weeks.
I love these interactions, but I do wish they took the time to explain certain shit, like at all. Like, I fucking love classic Tails, but he does just kind of appear after you beat the Death Egg robot, without much explanation besides assumption. Shadow and Silver are rival bosses, but both appear to show support at the end like shit's cool now, as if they were under mind control before or something. It don't bother me too much, as I still really like a lot of the cutscenes that are here, but the most egregious thing to me is them all just standing there and shouting nice words instead of helping in any real way.
Come on, Sonic! Smack him! You've got this, Sonic.
You can win, Sonic.
You've got the power, Sonic!
Focus your spirit.
We're with you guys! I believe in you, Sonic! Don't give in, Sonic!
I know you can do this, Sonic!
You can win, Sonic! You always do!
Like, holy fucking shit. Wait a minute. This would have been the perfect opportunity to bring back the little ritual that the Dreamcast era used to transform into Super Sonic. Having them all join in on the fucking chaos's power enriched by the heart speech would have been fucking iconic, especially since the lines they actually say sound more like preset Rocket League options. Yeah, so I realized while I was editing that I just kind of didn't finish relaying the plot and got distracted like a dumbass, so let me finish that real quick. We don't really learn that much about the Time Eater throughout the course of the game. It appears often, but besides its ability to manipulate time and weakness to the emeralds, it isn't really explained. Everything is learned at the end, even his name. I also realized Chaos's power enriched by the heart isn't actually a part of the ritual I was referring to. I got confused since I hadn't played these games in a while, but after recording the cutscenes, I realized the ritual is more about empowering the emeralds with positive energy, which could mean that the Time Eater draws energy from negative emotions, and that's why it's both weak to the Chaos Emeralds and drawn to Eggman, but the only thing we can really do is speculate on that, since in the game itself, he just kinda finds this nigga.
After my most recent setback, I stumbled upon the primordial form of this unique creation, which I discovered had amazing abilities even I have never been able to master. It could erase time and space. I then had the brilliant idea to use my discovery to undo my previous defeats.
It also means that them using team chat dialogue is actually doing something. It's just a bit confusing since more than half of the people that show up can also go super or some variation of that, and they don't even fucking try. After the Supersonics destroyed the Time Eater, everyone is sent back to the birthday party for some reason. I always thought it was weird that the portal for these two niggas just kind of lags behind for a while, but it does allow for them to say their goodbyes before the game ends, so I guess it was necessary.
Hey, Sonic! Enjoy your future! It's gonna be great!
Simplistic is probably the best word to describe it, and considering who the writing team was at the time, that was probably for the best. If anything, the story being shorter had these niggas in rare form, cause this game has a lot of memorable moments and lines. While watching the cutscenes for the first time in like years, I found myself reciting a lot of the dialogue by heart, much like I do with the adventure games or Star Fox 64. It shows how memorable some of these lines really are, since even though I've been getting violently high and replaying the stages a lot over the years, I literally can't remember the last time I watched any of this. It has a lot of memorable moments too. The cutscene where the two Sonics meet for the first time is one of those things that's been living in my head rent-free for years. And the after credits with the two Eggmans is great. I love the idea that this nigga's lost so much of his mind from losing to Sonic that even his past self thinks he's batshit insane.
Wow, will I really get that crazy?
I really wish there was more of that. They try to bury the lead throughout the game to make you think the Time Eater took him like everybody else, but since fucking nobody thought he wasn't behind this, shit feels mad pointless. The story might just be the most underdeveloped thing about this game, but I can't bring myself to really hate it. It might just be nostalgia, but it feels like effort was still put into making it entertaining despite being undercooked, and I still managed to gain some enjoyment out of it, even if I get frustrated by some other things. Now, I'm not even gonna hold you. I fucking love the way this game plays. I've always been in that rare group of people that kinda like every Sonic gameplay style. Some are definitely better than others, but there's usually something I can enjoy in most of them. If anything, the story might be undercooked simply to account for the amount of effort put into making the actual gameplay smooth as fuck. So much so that this wasn't even the order this was originally gonna go in. I just got too excited and now I'm already too far into writing this section. Since this game branched off of Unleashed during development, modern Sonic controls kind of like that, but not exactly. While Generations is still fairly stiff when walking, compared to Unleashed it's much less so, and the fucking homing attack is on the right button here, so these small changes really help the controls feel more responsive and intuitive than the predecessor. Classic Sonic has always been a bit of a debate starter in this game. His physics aren't exactly one-to-one with the Genesis games, because that was a little impossible to do in the Boost engine. So what they did do is the best approximation that could work. Not only that, but I personally feel like they exemplified some of the differences in order to ensure that even though the style isn't completely the same, it still provides a good experience. I say this for a few reasons. Number one being that momentum has a much weaker focus, seeing as how rolling on inclines actively decreases your speed here. Number two is that badnik bouncing is amplified a lot more, not only being satisfying to pull off, but a lot of paths even require it to reach them. And number three, the spin dash was given its own button and powered the fuck up, allowing spin dash jumps to be even more useful than before. Some don't like the changes here, but I always enjoyed the way the classic controls here. It's not nearly as egregious as Sonic 4's physics, and the levels are properly designed around them, which allows them to provide what I think is still a very fast and fun experience. Although speaking of which, the level design in this game is its best aspect. There's only 9, but considering what they had to do, it's understandable. Every returning level is redesigned here, incorporating not just completely new elements in them, but elements from completely different levels that didn't make it in. The joke with a lot of Sonic games may be go right or hold boost to win, but Generation takes people with that notion and
Bottle their neck and spit in their mouth.
both styles have very complex levels with multiple pathways that lead to hidden red rings and shortcuts, a lot of which take a genuine skill to pull off, which is why I can never get this helicopter in Speed Highway, and while I'll never quite understand how getting the last red rings in Sky Sanctuary works. If anything, that's the one thing I don't like about the levels. At times they can feel a bit too confusing to traverse, and coupled with certain red rings being on paths you can just kinda lock yourself out of, 100% can get frustrating as hell, especially Sky Sanctuary. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, this video would have been out way quicker if I'd have stopped forgetting shit. This time, I somehow managed to forget about the fucking skill system, and some extra shit, but we'll get to that. When beating levels, you get points depending on your rank. These can be used in the shop, which, fun facts, if you turn the tutorials off, is actually the only time you'll see Omochao. Yeah, I'm surprised I kept that dumbass line in too, I'm not gonna lie. The skills can give you a variety of effects for both Sonics. Some are shared between them, while others are specific to the respective act and can be sorted into 5 presets for each, like extending Modern's boost gauge or allowing Classic access to the elemental shields. The Supersonic is designated as a skill too, but it takes up a whole preset by itself. It just kind of feels mad pointless for it to be one. He can make gameplay feel a bit unnecessary too, at least in Modern's case. Now, I don't really think it was any other way they could have differentiated Modern Super from Classic in this engine. Buffing his boost to the point that he can basically skip the whole stage makes sense and is cool and all, but I actually like this game's level design and would kind of like to play it, so I kind of just avoid going Super in this game. Unfortunately, the same goes for the special skill you unlock once beating the Time Eater, Time Stop. This was like a fucking amazing idea, but the execution is just so mid. Being able to slow the game down at any moment could have made for some pretty fun or cinematic moments if used at the right time, but unfortunately many of the moments you might want to slow down don't let you, and most other moments feel awkward when slowed down, so I've always kinda ignored this one. Honestly, the only ones that you really need are the ones on screen for Modern and either Super or the shields for Classic. It grinds my gears a little bit that the shields don't respawn unless you die, so it's almost expected for you to do a no-hit run in order to get actual consistent use out of them, but I still get actual use out of them and can actually play the game with his super, so I like his pool a lot more. Can't say the same about the bosses though, which is also something I didn't really delve into. Yeah, this is an interruption for the interruption, shut the fuck up. They are also returning from past titles, but with vast changes to them, even outside of not being in Super or Werehog form. The Death Egg robot has been restructured to have multiple phases in a dynamic arena with whole new mechanics. Perfect Chaos has you running through a lot more of the city than the original boss. Not being supersonic really allows the pathways to be more interesting than a straight line. And the Egg Dragoon is basically a completely new fight, which was very necessary since the OG was heavily reliant on the Werehog's abilities. The only unique one is the Time Eater itself, and I say it's the only one that falls flat. Part of that is definitely salt for how hard it was the first time, but after you get the idea, the boss is just kinda boring. Swapping the perspectives mid-fight was a cool idea, but it isn't really used in an interesting way. I rarely even get close enough to hit him in 2D, so in the end, that mechanic just feels a little wasted. The main bosses aren't the only ones though. In order to get all the emeralds and finish the story, you have to beat a rival boss for each era. All 3 of these are equally gas, and I return to the game to replay them often. Metal Sonic is an evolution of his race in CD, incorporating entirely new attacks and expanding on ones he did in the original. Shadow is an evolution of his boss in SA2. Thankfully it's not nearly as annoying, and a new mechanic where the characters can power up by collecting orbs of what I assume is chaos energy is implemented. And Silver is a completely new boss, unlike anything in 06, and it's fucking beautiful. They make a much better use of his telekinesis and actually make him seem like a threat, which I just think is neat. Another thing I really like is how all the rivals need to be outran in some way, either through chasing them or them chasing you, turning it into not just a boss fight but a competition, which I just think is a really cool idea for a rival fight. There's also a harder difficulty that you could choose for each boss after you beat it the first time. I just never really gave too much of a fuck about it because they barely change anything. Oh yeah, there's a fucking pinball table too. It was a pre-order bonus they made free after a while, but I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I ain't ever really give much of a fuck about this since it was literally just pinball. I wish I could say this is the last intrusion for this video, but unfortunately I forgot forgot about the fucking trophy room too, so I'm gonna be seeing y'all in the next segment anyway. Speaking of which, 100% in this game isn't simply beating the story. There's multiple challenges for each level that can just be simple time challenges and the like, but the best ones feature Sonic's friends in some sort of way, or switch up the gameplay in a way that no other level really does. It's even the only way you can technically play as Tails, which just kinda makes me sad, honestly. A lot of these characters would have been fun to play, and their powers would be fun to mess around with in this engine. These missions unlock music you can use to switch out in levels and tons of concept art for both this game and past titles. And this concept art is 1000% part of what started my interest in game development. I used to just sit and look at these sometimes. It was the first time I ever really considered how much must really go into making these things, but while many games are fun and do add a lot of replayability, as a fan they do kinda leave me wanting more. I don't usually end up feeling that way for long though. Not only do I enjoy the content that is available, but I'm usually bought back in because of just how beautiful the game is.
This chemical plant feels familiar. I'd never forget a smell like this. And that pink water makes me really nervous for some reason.
Like I said earlier, one of their main goals was making these classic levels look as good as they possibly could on current hardware, and they didn't miss. It's almost hard to put into words just how much I love the presentation here. Every level is recreated beautifully, with a lot of details that keep their art styles unique. It would be easy for everything to be homogenized into this one art style, borrowing assets from each other and the like, but even with the abundance of city levels here, they're all distinct, and most have at least one set piece that makes it memorable even when compared to the originals. For instance, the truck that chases you at the end of City Escape has fucking saw blades and a propulsion system now, while in the classic version of the same stage, the truck doesn't have all that, but now it's on your ass the entire time. My favorite things are the small details though. Easter eggs like these fucked up missing posters, the signs in Speed Highway leading to past characters and locations, the grapes behind Knuckles referencing the Sonic 3 manual saying it's his favorite food, and both adventure poses being recreated consistently just makes me happy. Third time's the charm, huh? Yeah, so basically the trophy room is technically a part of a promotion with various producers of Sonic merch, where said merch would also come with a couple of codes for you to put into this special room, only accessible by holding select in the collection room. But you know, the internet, so they're all readily available to add to anybody's game. These codes would give you trophies, obviously, but what makes them special is that various characters that don't appear in the game itself do appear as trophies. Even the Chower here, which makes me happy because I love these little niggas, and it's mad confusing that they're not in the main game anyway. The poses aren't all just random too. Many of them are recreations of the Yukawa artwork used for Sonic Channel or past works. There's something about that was always so cool to me. You don't often see the 3D models doing the exact same pose as the 2D artwork, and it's always so much more interesting to look at than the fucking idle poses. It's hard for me not to just smile while playing this game, because you can really feel the love put into every aspect of it. Them composing one of the best soundtracks ever definitely adds to that, since it's hard not to hum along to the whole shit really. I've been listening to it for a good portion of my life at this point, and it's still kinda hard to describe why it's so fire. But maybe sometimes you just gotta fucking hear it, so there you go. Honestly though, my favorite thing about this game is that it isn't afraid of its past. And that sounds weird to some, but others will know that nowadays not many franchises will reference a controversial or almost universally hated entry. That might make sense from a business standpoint, but for many other it feels boring. The stuff that didn't work is what needs to be remade the most. A lot of the time it had great potential, but that was squandered in some way during development, so seeing Sega acknowledge a mistake like 06 and give it the same love and attention as the rest of the game is amazing. Stuff like that is what proves to me that this game was made out of love, and I don't know about anybody else, but when I watch something, play something, or read something, my main goal is to just feel shit, and when real love is put into something, you can feel that. Rooftop Run wouldn't be my favorite stage if this shot didn't make me just as awestruck as I was the first time every time. And I know there's all these long, complicated reasons I can give for why I think the game is good, or why you should play it. But I feel like it's no different from WWE. What matters the most is how you feel by the end. And when I hear I smile. I'd love to hear how this game makes you feel too, though. Hearing different perspectives on shit you do or don't enjoy is fun when you're not being a cunt about it. See you niggas next time, though.